Welcome back to Patriot List TV. Welcome to episode 2. We are here with Sean Bootsma, who has a storied career in the military and something that's probably different than a lot of other veterans. So I'm excited to talk to you today, Sean. Thank you very much for coming in and telling us a little bit about your career.
Yeah.
So why don't we start from the beginning? What
Absolutely.
was it that drew you to military service?
Well, first, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This is a great opportunity. My story is a little bit different because I'm a Navy chaplain. So as a Navy chaplain, we tend to come in a little bit older. You know, when I got into the military, I was already 33 years old, established family, children. So unlike a lot of people that come into the military, you come in and you start your family as a military member. And so you get married, you have children, and they're brought in and brought up into the culture of being deployed, being operational, the long days, long nights, everything else. So a family grows accustomed organically, typically. But for us, when we came in, it was a major transition because we were already married for, about 6 years, 7 years. And suddenly my family, my wife, my kids, all had to adjust to now dad's gone for a year, several months at a time, repeatedly. So you go through quite a bit of transition period as you come in when you see, you come in a little bit older. And also the other opportunity is because you're coming in a little older, you've spent a lot of time in the civilian world, civilian career, education systems, everything else. So you see the difference between a civilian world, the civilian system, and the military system.
What did you do prior to the military, Sean?
Well, I did a lot of construction work. I used to do concrete construction. It was for Choice Concrete in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It was a commercial industrial, so kudos to them. They're actually awesome. They're still at work. Good folks. Actually, the owner used to be in the Navy. He was I forget the exact role he had. I want to say somewhere in the engineering department. Working on the screws of the ship.
That's awesome.
And so great guy.
Was that the reason that you chose to raise your hand and serve in the military?
A little. I mean, I had a little prior experience back in the early 90s. I joined the 110th Air National Guard in South Dakota, Joe Fossfield, and I was a crew chief, kind of tactical aircraft maintenance apprentice on the F-16. And so we were operational a couple of times, went to Operation Provide Comfort out of Turkey. And a couple other small little missions here and there. I went to Italy a few times. So great learning experience. So then I eventually gravitated into the ministry, and well, the short of the story is I got into a fight at the church parking lot, and somebody said, maybe ministry in the church isn't for you. You shouldn't be beating people up in the church parking lot. You should probably, maybe the military is a better fit.
I think I want to dig a little deeper into that story, Sean.
That's a great story, too.
You're a combat hardened chaplain.
Yeah, not necessarily. A little soft in the middle, but you try to keep up, especially with the real combatants. Because I'm not a combatant. I couldn't necessarily do what those guys do. They're genuine heroes.
Well, everybody has their place for sure on the battlefield, and we have a long storied history of amazing people of the cloth that are serving.
You do. Yeah, they're actually, I've met some astonishing men and women that have done incredible things. A lot of them they can't even talk about necessarily, being the chaplain. They get to save lives when they can't even brag about it at times. So
it's a beautiful thing.
It's a lot of
selflessness.
fun. It is. It checks your integrity in a lot of ways.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Well, I think that's a great. So you didn't get into. What was the decision point? What made you say, I'm going to go from pouring concrete to serving others as a chaplain? Well,
in a lot of ways, you'd be surprised the consistency between the two. Ministry and the culture, a warrior culture, in fact, are very interconnected. And so when I joined, it was, like I said, I already had a little familiarity. I wasn't entirely sure what it would be like to be a chaplain. I was in the clergy, prior military experience. Somebody made the recommendation after the fight, and
we'll get back to that.
Yeah, but it clicked. It was like, oh, why didn't I ever think of that? That's a great idea. And so just started doing the research. Looked at the Army, looked at the Air Force, then looked at the Navy. And then once I saw the Navy option, Navy chaplaincy, you saw how expeditionary it was. I mean, you were not just going to be working with the Navy, you're going to work with the Marine Corps, you're going to work with the Coast Guard, possibly Merchant Marines. It's always on the go. There's never a moment of real rest. And so looking at that, it's like, you know what, that's my speed. That's what I want to do. And probably the best decision I've ever made in my life, and don't regret it at all. And it forces me to continually improve.
That's awesome. I couldn't agree more. I had a very similar experience.
Awesome.
All right, so before we move on, let's go ahead and peel back the onion a little bit. And so tell me what happened. You got into a physical confrontation right there in the church parking lot?
Yeah, it was. I was.
I mean,
it was my last church. I was in.
Most people can understand getting heated sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. It happens, and it was incidental. You know, it's not like I was trying to pick a fight or anything. But I was in Morrison, Illinois. I was at a small church there, and great church, great folks. And we always had this one problem with this guy. I don't know who he was, but he was always ripping through the church yard with his car into the parking lot. And, you know, I called the police a couple times. Hey, could you take care of this guy? He's he's a little too reckless for the people here. And no real response. And one day, it was a beautiful day in October, I was out there with my wife and my kids. My wife and I were about to go on a nice little trip because take a couple days off. And my parents were coming up from Iowa to watch the kids for the weekend. And it was a beautiful night. It was dusk, and here comes that little shit. Wow. Tore through the yard, and it was one of those nights where it was so nice that all the kids were out in the parking lot, because it's parking lot, bikes, rollerblades, everything else, so kids everywhere. This guy comes tearing through there, you know, at an incredibly rate of speed, and just about makes a couple of speed bumps out of a little kid. And that was kind of that, okay,
yeah,
I gotta talk to this kid.
That went over the line.
So, you know, went over, tried to reason with him. It didn't go so well.
How old was he?
I think he was about 20. He was a young kid. I was a little older.
He's an adult.
Yeah.
He can get his ass whipped like anybody else.
Yeah, he could. But I've never really been in a fight before. That was kind of that. You know, I've been in a few scuffles here and there. You grow up like anybody does, but here I'm a minister. I'm supposed to be an adult, a reasonable adult.
I can't say the same thing.
Yeah. No, you think you're above it all until you're put in that situation, and then you find out what you're just as flawed as everybody else. In honesty, and this kid, he comes up and we kind of get into a verbal altercation, and at some point he comes up and he does one of the chest bumps. You know, he's a tall kid. He's a good head, and I'm not a tall guy anyway, so he's a good head taller than I am, and he comes up. We do the chest bump thing, and I'm looking up at him, and he's got the funniest looking face. You know, I just remember looking up and it's like, why does he look like that? And that was kind of my last thought. But apparently, this look is the last look right before you get a headbutt in the face, and it just. I still got the scar on my nose on that one. He just came down. My wife said it sounded like two bowling balls clunking together in a church parking lot. You know, it was just. So at that moment, my world got really narrow, and it came back. And then at that moment, like everybody else, you just see red. And at the end of the fight, I got this lady. She was one of the church members. She comes up and says, "Hey, Sean, you need to get off of him." I'm like, what? Why? He's not moving. It's done.
Wow.
So at this point, it's small town.
Well, I mean, if that's your first fight, you're 1 for 1.
Yeah, 1 for 1.
1,000.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. And so it was just one of those days. We pummeled each other pretty good. It looked worse than what it really was. Just a couple face cuts, and I probably got the worst of it with a kind of busted up nose and everything. He was fine, just knocked out a little bit. The worst of it was so throughout this entire altercation, in the town there's a train that cuts right through the middle. So people are all, I swear, everybody in the town has one of those little radio trackers, so they're listening to everyone talking on the radio, police, scanner, that kind of thing. And so people are calling 911, saying, "Hey, there's something going on here." And at that moment, the train was cutting through town. So the police, the ambulance, and every rubbernecker, including my parents, are sitting on the other side of the tracks waiting to get to the parking lot at the church. They can't get there until this train passes. So the fight is done. We're just, I'm kind of sitting there making sure the kid can breathe. I've got him on his side, and just as the train rolls through, suddenly they all pour in, and so the cops, ambulance, cars all pour into the parking lot all at once.
It's a lot of drama.
A lot of drama
for Iowa.
Yeah, or Illinois at the time.
Illinois.
Yes, and so it was quite the scene, and so growing up, I wasn't the perfect kid. Nobody ever is. And so the ambulance attends me. I got this big rag on my nose. I'm doused in blood because, again, small face cuts bleed a lot. And
Yes, they do.
yes, and so after everything is said, they got the kid into the ambulance. He was fine, and I got to go back and give a police report. So I'm walking back, and at that point, there's my parents sitting next to my wife and my kids, and I'm walking up to them with a big rag on my face. Like my eyes are starting to turn black and blue already. There's blood on my shoes, my clothes, and I think my dad's traditional look was that that kind of pinch the bridge of your nose, thinking what. Why? Will you ever grow up, son? And it was just one of those moments. And it was after that somebody recommended, maybe a chaplaincy in the military might be a better fit for you. Sure enough, it worked pretty well.
That's amazing. Well, that's a great segue into talking about how your time in the military has maybe allowed you to mature or to have some clear understanding
Absolutely.
of who you are as a man.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's I think one of the biggest things when you get into the military, you realize not only is it a warrior culture, but it's a leadership culture. I mean, in any business is management. You're looking to produce a product, which is important to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But management is still not leadership. And leadership, it's fundamental principle. I mean, there's a lot to it, and there's volumes and volumes written on it, a lot of spilled ink on the subject. But the thing that I've learned most, especially in military leadership, and the things that you have to apply yourself to, and you see everybody else having to apply themselves to, is to be the bearer of bad news. Leadership is fundamentally, like look any commanding officer, any sergeant major, command master chief, their job is to hear their Marines and their sailors' bad news. Because they don't get a report all day long about how everything is working. I mean, they'd sit there, okay, this is working, green checks on all of it, it's all going together. He'd be there all day listening to everything that's working. It's assumed that everything is going at 100%. But the reality is it never is. There's always something going wrong. And it is a leader's responsibility to create a culture in which he is forced to problem solve. So hypothetically, if you've got a command who works with 100% efficiency 100% of the time, would they ever need a leader? Would they ever need, or do they just need a manager? Because technically the only crew you'll ever have that will work with 100% efficiency 100% of the time are robots.
Yeah, and that's coming. I mean,
it is.
And our little saying in my part of the military is that you manage resources and you lead people.
Exactly.
And so the leading of people requires a level of empathy, a level of compassion, a level of understanding, an ability to be honest, to earn trust. There's all these things that aren't required when you're just managing resources. And then when you start to see your people as a resource, you're failing.
Now you're managing them,
Exactly.
And you want them to be as equivalent to, the power plant you work on, the generator you work on, the weapons you work on. But, people in a sense, they require maintenance, but that's leadership, not management. You manage your product, but you lead your people. And so in order to do that, though, especially very effectively, is you have to hear their bad news. And you see some of the worst leaders are the ones who retaliate against bad news. Don't tell me the bad stuff, just tell me the good stuff and make me feel good.
Correct. Don't shoot the messenger.
Don't shoot the messenger.
And understand that you want people to have trust that they can tell you what's really going on. If not, you find yourself sitting in the glass tower, people telling you what you want to hear, and you have no real understanding of the situation.
Exactly. You got a commander of a ship, and he's assuming it's 100% functional and it is seaworthy, because nobody wants to tell him the bad news.
Yes.
And then the reality is he's actually only functioning at about 30%, seaworthiness, and nobody's told him otherwise. And so he's assuming he can do a great job, when in fact he has set himself up for failure.
Yeah, it's very dangerous.
Absolutely.
Dangerous.
So I think that's one of the things, especially you apply it to ourselves, because that's always keeping us in check. Have I created an environment where people can be honest with me? Have I been able to be upfront with them even about my own weaknesses, so they understand, hey, he gets it.
I agree. What's interesting is that we can do that. We have done that, and many other great companies do this as well. When they offer a place for their users to provide direct feedback.
Yes.
That feedback comes directly to me as the CEO, and I know what people like and what they don't like.
Absolutely.
And it's such an important piece of what we do when we develop products and services to serve others.
Yep.
It's always about the customer, and I'm assuming it's the same for you. You are a customer-centric human being whose focus is to give selflessly to the men and women of the military.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because in a lot of ways too, because we're a bit of an anomaly. A chaplain is an anomaly in the system because the system is very technically driven, you know, and we are given to produce a lot of product as far as services go, warfare goes, and here we are a religious entity of sorts. So how a lot of people describe us is we're sort of the agent of the First Amendment. Our primary job is to ensure that everybody has that bubble in which they can sort of unleash and let go and be exactly who they are in a brief moment. And so it changes the dynamics a little bit. And so we also don't necessarily deal with product as much as, again, the system. You know, we're not running programs, we're not driving ships, we're not shooting weapons. We are dealing strictly with people in their most, kind of in a lot of ways, intimate moments, because you are dealing with those kind of problems that they don't often reveal to other people. And so you find yourself quite literally walking holy ground frequently with the secrets, the issues that they deal with on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I'll speak for myself and for the guys that I've had the distinct pleasure of being in Iraq with, being in my units with, amazing folks, and we've always been very appreciative to have the chaps there.
Yeah, they come in all shapes and sizes and colors a little bit, you know,
and for us with Patriot List is one of the reasons that we started the company. We started it to serve those people who are being asked to move every 2 years, those people that whose husbands or wives are gone for 6 to 9 months to 12 months at a time, and they still need to be able to, you know, buy, sell, and trade safely within their military communities. And with all of the things that are going on out there across social media now, it's hard to find a safe space to do what needs to be done.
Right. And just as we were talking about, your most important resources is the people, and especially each other. And, you know, if you can't rely on one another, especially us in the military, you know, we don't have much else to hang our hat on. You know, that's the moral element of our service, is it requires us to develop that integrity, reliability, trust, and networking with one another, because that is our primary resource as far as all of our warfighting capability goes. It's us. You know, the weapon is going to be great, but it requires a good person behind it to use it the right way.
And even further, it requires that person to have a strong anchor at home.
Absolutely.
It requires that family structure to have the ability to be safe and secure, and for them to know that they're going to be taken care of.
Yes, absolutely.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and so it boils down to, in a service like this, it boils down to the people that we are able to connect with and develop that trust with. Because again, like you said too, you know, we're always on the go, and we kind of need each other to help take care of our families at home.
We do.
You know, and the best way we can do that is the networking process.
It is, and what's so interesting to me is some of our contemporary companies that are in the broader civilian market, they do virtually nothing to help secure and make safe their platforms. It's not part of their culture. It's not part of their inherent system. And for us, it's all about values and culture.
It is.
It's all about that shared sense of service to one's nation and what that means as families that can work with other families to.
Well, think about it. I mean, because when we serve together, we know that we are serving for a greater common good. And the best way to also understand that greater common good is to also understand we have a greater common enemy. And of all the services that are out there, yeah, there are hackers and everything else, but we actually get to see a little bit of the underbelly of just how insidious enemies can be. And to have a secure environment in which to operate and network that sees it from honestly, a more personal angle than just, say, Amazon or anyone like else. Yeah, they know there are people who are going to infiltrate the system for financial gain. That's okay, that's fine, finances, but for us it becomes even a personal threat. You know, how much of our information gets out there? How much of our, you know, details about our personal lives that the enemy can use against us makes it all the more important to secure those kind of lines of communication.
100%,
So we know.
right. That's why we started PatriotList TV. We found that one of the most important things is that the education isn't getting out to members of the military. They're still out there jumping on Facebook Marketplace this or OfferUp that, and they just don't realize just how dangerous it is. And it takes one Google search of Craigslist to recognize that people are being murdered and robbed every day.
The world is getting more dangerous every day. It really is. And so how do you secure that? Well, so far, again, it goes back to us and those who actually know here's our common good, and we have identified our common enemy, and that's all the more reason to watch our backs.
That's exactly us. Well, I can't say thank you enough, Sean, for coming on today. I think it's important for our user base and the other folks out there to hear from somebody who's as selfless and has chosen to serve the way you have. And I hope that that you'll share Patriot List with your folks and let them know it's a free application and it's there to serve them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, don't forget, it's a great resource. I think we'll need it at the end of the day, every one of us. So thanks for having me. I appreciate the time.
That, Sean. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Patriot List TV. Stay tuned next time when we bring you another active duty member or veteran that's going to share with you the great things they're doing for our military and veteran community. Go to PatriotList.US or the Apple App Store or the Google App Store and download the Patriot List app for free.